Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of absolute precision.
Oh, definitely.
Like you break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points and says, well, there it is.
Right. It's a clean, measurable, undeniable fact.
Exactly. But then, you look at a photograph of that same person and suddenly the mechanical precision is just completely gone.
Yeah, because the photograph just shows you the surface.
Right. It captures the lighting, the mood, the outfit they chose that day. It shows you what they look like to the world, but it tells you absolutely nothing about how their bones are structured or like how their internal organs are actually organized.
It captures the atmosphere, sure, but it leaves out the mechanics entirely. And we fall for the exact same illusion when we look at the built environment around us.
We really do.
We see the brick, we see the sunlight hitting the glass, but we are completely blind to the underlying anatomy.
Which is exactly the tension we are decoding today. We are diving into a stack of architectural theory today, specifically pulling from these foundational textbooks on orthographic projection.
And some really fascinating essays from working architects, too.
Right, essays on how the act of drawing literally shapes human thought. So if you are joining us, whether you're an aspiring designer or maybe someone currently tearing their hair out trying to renovate a kitchen.
We've all been there.
Oh, yeah. Or even if you're just fiercely curious about how the spaces you live in are actually brought into existence, well, you are in the right place.
Absolutely.
Our mission today is to uncover the secret visual language of architecture. But to do that, the sources make a really bold claim. They say we first have to unlearn how our own eyes naturally see.
Yeah, it asks for a total cognitive shift.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how you and I naturally navigate the world. We see in perspective.
Right.
If you stand in the middle of a long street and look down, the parallel lines of the sidewalks, they seem to converge in the distance, right? Objects get smaller the further away they are.
Yeah, that's just how biology works.
Exactly. Perspective drawing mimics that biological reality. It shows a building as it appears from one specific, highly subjective viewpoint.
Which makes for a gorgeous rendering, honestly. I mean, you get the drama, the sunset reflecting off the windows, maybe the stale of a person walking a dog out front. It feels real.
It does feel real. But the problem is, you cannot build from a feeling.
Ah, yeah, that makes sense.
Architecture is simply too complex to be understood, let alone constructed, from a single subjective image. Imagine a carpenter trying to frame a wall based on a perspective drawing.
Oh, that sounds like a nightmare.
It would be. Because the lines are receding into the distance to create that illusion of depth, the dimensions are constantly distorting. A 10-foot wall in the foreground looks huge, while a 10-foot wall in the background looks, 2 inches tall.
Right.
You cannot lay a ruler on that drawing and extract a usable measurement.
Okay, let's unpack this because this is where the medical analogy really clicks into place for me. The foundational textbooks we're looking at introduce this concept of orthographic drawing.
Right.
And if a perspective drawing is that witty photograph of a person smiling in the park, an orthographic drawing is the MRI.
Oh, that is a perfect way to look at it.
It ruthlessly strips away the visual complexity, completely removes that perspective distortion, and it projects three-dimensional objects into two-dimensional views at exact right angles.
So the parallel lines actually stay parallel.
Exactly. A 10-foot wall is drawn at the exact same scale, whether it's right in front of you or like 100 feet back in the drawing.
What's fascinating here is that this orthographic view is a total deliberate abstraction. It does not imitate human vision in any way.
Yeah.
Human beings never see the world orthographically.
Never. We just don't have the eyes for it.
Right. Instead, it offers this deeply rational, mathematical way to control scale and dimension. It isolates specific aspects of the building, so the horizontal layout, the vertical relationships, the external geometry.
So that the chaos of a three-dimensional space becomes something you can actually analyze and measure.
Exactly.
I mean, it almost feels unnatural when you first look at it. It's taking a living, breathing space and forcing it onto a flat, unforgiving plane. But as the texts point out, it is really the only way a building becomes constructible.
You can't hand a contractor a beautiful watercolor painting of a house and just say, make the stairs feel sort of like this.
Right. You have to give them the exact, undistorted math. And the sources break this rational abstraction down into three foundational instruments. We've got the plan, the section, and the elevation.
Those three drawings form the core triad of architectural representation. They are the primary tools used to basically slice open the world.
So let's start with the most famous slice, the floor plan. The textbook refers to this as architecture from above.
A classic definition.
Yeah, but going through these essays, I realized my own assumption about floor plans was totally wrong.
How so?
Well, when most of us think of a floor plan, we just imagine like a giant taking the roof off a house and looking down inside. But it's significantly more surgical than that.
Oh, far more surgical. A plan is a horizontal slice, and typically it is executed at a very specific standardized height.
Right, which is
roughly 1,200 millimeters, or about 4 feet above the finished floor.
That specific number just blew my mind. Why 4 feet? I mean, why not just look down at the floor itself?
Because the goal of the plan is to capture the functional intelligence of the space.
Oh, okay.
If you imagine a laser cutting through the building at ankle height, you would miss all the windows. You would just see solid, unbroken walls.
Oh, sure, which doesn't tell you how light enters or how views are framed at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you cut it 8 feet, way up near the ceiling, you miss the doors, the windows, and the furniture. But slicing exactly at 1,200 millimeters means that imaginary blade cuts through the walls, the doors, and the window openings simultaneously.
It reveals the complete arrangement of spaces.
Yes. How the furniture sits, and the pathways you use to actually navigate between them.
And the sources call the plan the generator of design, because this is where you figure out the spatial organization. It shows the circulation routes, like literally how a human body gets from the front door to the kitchen without tripping over a sofa.
Yeah, and it relies on a very rigid graphic convention to communicate all this information.
Right, the line weights.
Exactly. The elements that are physically sliced by that imaginary 4-foot blade, like the structural walls or the columns, are drawn with the heaviest, thickest, darkest ink.
So line hierarchy is the actual language being spoken here.
Yeah, the cut elements must visually dominate the page. Secondary information, like the little arc showing which way a door swings open, or the delicate outline of a dining room table, that's drawn with much lighter, thinner lines.
Which is so important because if an architect draws a table with the same thick line weight as a load-bearing wall.
The contractor might literally try to pour a solid concrete table tied into the foundation.
Oh man, imagine that. But yeah, the line weight tells the builder what holds the building up versus what just sits inside it.
Precisely.
I see the logic and I understand why the builder needs it, but I have to push back a little on this obsession with the plan.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because if I'm reading these architectural essays correctly, the plan is treated almost like holy text. But if real people, like if you and I never ever experience a building floating 4 feet above the floor like a drone looking straight down,
right,
why do architects prioritize it so heavily? I mean, doesn't relying on this totally abstract God's eye view risk creating spaces that look brilliant on paper, but ignore the actual grounded human experience of just walking into a room?
Well, I will vigorously defend the God's eye view here.
Fair enough.
Precisely because it is completely detached from the emotional experience of standing in a room.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. If you design a hospital or a school just by walking around and deciding what feels good in the moment, the building will fail as a system.
Okay, that's a fair point.
The plan is the architect's strategy board. It answers massive logistical problems that human vision just can't see all at once.
Like what?
Like, how do 500 people safely exit this building in a fire? Where is the privacy gradient? How do we transition from a noisy public lobby to a quiet, secure office in the back?
Right, you cannot solve those complex networks of movement without zooming out to an abstraction.
Exactly.
Okay, I hear that. It's the ultimate map of efficiency. But even the sources admit there's a trap there because a map is not the territory.
No, it's not.
A brilliantly efficient layout doesn't automatically mean the space feels good to be inside.
It absolutely is a trap, and it's one architecture students fall into all the time, apparently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they design a floor plan that looks like a beautiful graphic poster. The geometry is perfect. The circles align with the squares. But a floor plan cannot tell you if a room feels claustrophobic or if it feels grand and inspiring.
It shows the organization of life, but it cannot capture how a space rises, breathes, or compresses around the human body.
Exactly. To understand the emotional reality of the architecture, we have to abandon the plan and look at the second drawing in the triad.
A section. And honestly, digging through the stack of research, this was the drawing that completely hooked me.
It's a powerful one.
Yeah. If the plan is the drawing of organization telling us where we are on the map, the section is the drawing of experience. It tells us how the room actually feels.
Because the blade has changed direction. Instead of slicing horizontally across the waist, the section slices the building completely vertically.
You imagine taking a giant saw, cutting the entire building from the tip of the roof straight down deep into the dirt of the foundation,
pulling half the building away,
and standing back to look directly at the exposed vertical cut face. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
When I read that description in the textbook, my brain immediately jumped to those classic ant farm toys. You know, the 2 panes of glass filled with green gel or sand.
Oh, that captures the visual perfectly.
Right. Because if you look at an ant farm from the top down, which would be the floor plan, you literally just see a thin, boring line of sand.
It tells you absolutely nothing about the life happening inside.
Exactly. But the second you look at the cross-section, the front of the glass, the entire drama is revealed. You see the main tunnels plunging downward. You see the little interconnected side caverns they've dug out.
You see how the ants are in a building. The humans are actually moving up, down, and through the entire vertical volume of the space.
Yes.
And that vertical volume is the emotional core of the architecture. The texts argue that sections reveal far more about spatial quality than plans ever could.
I totally get that now.
Think about the room you're sitting in right now. The plan told the builders where to put the walls around you. But the section dictates how high the ceiling is above your head.
It shows whether a tight, low-ceilinged hallway suddenly explodes into a massive, soaring atrium.
Yes. It maps exactly how a beam of sunlight enters through a skylight and washes down the wall. It maps the invisible air and light.
The vertical drama. But the texts also throw a major curveball here. They emphasize that the section isn't just about drawing pretty light rays and dramatic heights.
No, it's not just poetry.
Right, it connects that poetic spatial imagination to what they call tectonic reality, and this is where things get really difficult.
This raises an important question. How do the unforgiving rules of physics dictate our emotional experience of a room?
Right.
Because the section doesn't just show the empty air where we live, it forces the architect to draw the physical stuff that makes that empty air possible. Tectonic reality is the brutal honesty of construction.
Yeah, because if I want a beautiful, sweeping 10-foot ceiling in my living room, the section forces me to realize that there is a second floor above me.
Great.
And between my living room ceiling and the bedroom floor above, there has to be physical material. There are massive wooden floor joists. There are thick tubes of air conditioning ducts. There are water pipes. There is sound insulation.
The section forces you to draw that hidden mechanical sandwich.
That sounds like a lot to juggle.
It is. You might want a 10-foot ceiling, but when you draw the section and fit all the ductwork and structural steel into that zone, you realize the ceiling actually has to drop down to 8 feet.
Which entirely changes the emotional feel of the room.
Completely. This forces a constant negotiation between the poetic desire for space and the practical necessity of gravity and climate control. You have to imagine how a space is inhabited, structurally supported, and lit all in the exact same pencil stroke.
Which sounds exhausting, honestly. We've organized the inside traffic with our plan. We've negotiated gravity and emotion with our vertical section. But there's a huge blind spot here.
The outside.
Exactly. We've completely solved the inside of the building. But if I'm walking down the street, walking my dog past this house, I can't see any of that internal math.
No, it's all hidden.
I don't see the air ducts. I don't see the floor plan. So how does the architect translate all that internal complexity into a face that the neighborhood actually interacts with?
That external face is the domain of the third drawing, the elevation.
So an elevation is a flat, orthographic projection of one vertical external side of the building. You are standing outside looking straight at the facade, and once again, there is absolutely zero perspective distortion.
Right. It shows the rhythm of the windows, the external materials, the height of the roofline. It dictates how the building addresses the sidewalk, how it meets the sky, and how it responds to the building sitting next to it.
While I was reading through the architectural essays, the elevation really started to feel like the building's public relations document.
That's a good way to put it.
It's the handshake. It's how the building introduces itself to the world. Hundreds of people will walk past it every single day. They will never see the clever, highly efficient floor plan.
They will never feel the dramatic sunlight hitting the cross-section inside.
Exactly. Their entire relationship with the architecture is based strictly on the elevation.
It acts as the civic identity, certainly. But unlike public relations, a true orthographic elevation cannot lie.
What do you mean?
It is intensely compositional, meaning the architect is obsessing over the mathematical proportions, the balance between the solid brick walls and the empty voids of the glass windows. But it cannot fake what is happening inside.
Oh, I see.
If that section we talked about earlier required a massive 4-foot zone of ductwork between floors, the elevation has to reflect that. You can't just put a window there because the window would look straight into a dark duct space.
So the external face is totally tethered to the internal guts, and drawing it requires navigating some very strict graphic limitations.
Very strict.
The textbook highlights a fascinating detail. In a strictly orthographic elevation drawing, shadows are entirely omitted.
Which seems counterintuitive if you were trying to study what the outside of a building looks like.
Exactly. Without shadows, how do I know if a window is flush with the brick or if it's pushed 2 feet deep into the wall? How do I know if the roof hangs over the porch? If you take away shadows, the drawing just looks incredibly flat.
Architects omit shadows because shadows are tied to a specific time of day.
Oh, sure.
A shadow at noon looks different than a shadow at dusk. The orthographic drawing needs to be a timeless, objective record of geometry. So instead of relying on the sun, they return to that subtle control of line hierarchy.
Ah, line weights again.
Exactly. If a piece of the building projects forward toward the street, it is drawn with a heavy, thick line. As elements recede backward, the lines get thinner and thinner.
So they imply physical depth through the weight of the ink on the page, maintaining absolute geometric purity.
You've got it.
But this geometric purity doesn't exist in a vacuum. I mean, a beautiful elevation is useless if the building doesn't function. And that brings us to the actual revelation of this deep dive, the real magic the sources are trying to communicate.
That's where it all comes together.
Yeah. We've talked about the plan, the section, and the elevation individually, but the essays make it incredibly clear. These drawings do not matter on their own. Their true power only unlocks when they are forced to talk to each other.
They form a tightly bound, coordinated system. You can change a single line in one drawing without creating a ripple effect through the other two.
So what does this all mean? When I hit this part of the reading, it totally shifted my understanding of what an architect actually does. Because before this, I thought drawing was just a recording device.
Like a printer.
Yeah. I assumed an architect had a fully formed genius idea of a building floating in their head, and they just used paper to print it out so the builders could see it. But the texts argue that the paper actually talks back.
Drawing is not documentation. Drawing is a mode of thought. The friction between the 3 drawings is the crucible where the architecture is actually forged.
Let's walk through what that friction actually looks like in practice. Because this was a light bulb moment for me.
Let's do it.
Let's say you're designing a library. In your floor plan, you decide to draw a grand, sweeping staircase right in the middle of the reading room. It looks incredible on the plan, perfectly symmetrical, great circulation.
A masterpiece.
Right. But then you have to project that staircase up into the vertical section. And when you draw the section, you suddenly realize that the angle of your stairs is too steep. Or worse, the landing hits the second floor right where a massive structural steel beam is located.
Oh, no.
Yeah, anyone walking up those stairs is going to smash their head.
The geometry of the section has rejected the idea of the plan.
Exactly. The paper talks back. So now, to fix the head height issue in the section, you have to push the second floor 2 feet higher into the air.
But wait, you just changed the height of the entire building.
Yep. Which means you now have to go to your third drawing, the elevation. You look at your previously perfect, PR-friendly exterior facade, and you realize you just stretched the entire middle of the building by 2 feet.
Your windows look awkwardly spaced. The proportions are totally ruined.
Exactly.
So now you must redesign the external facade to restore the balance, which might mean moving a window 3 feet to the left on the elevation.
You see where this is going?
If you move the window on the outside, you have to go all the way back to the floor plan and make sure that window didn't just slide directly behind a bookshelf in the reading room.
It's an endless loop. Moving a line on one piece of paper triggers a crisis on another. The texts explicitly state that this grueling act of coordination reveals problems and possibilities that would remain totally vague if you were just picturing the building in your imagination.
The struggle between the plan, the section, and the elevation is what actually creates the architecture.
That is just so profound to me.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we discover what the essays refer to as the poetics of orthographic drawing. It sounds like a rigid mathematical nightmare. But great architects do not view this systematic coordination as a restriction. They view it as an instrument of truth.
Because it forces every single decision to be intentional. You can't fake it.
You cannot fake it. The discipline of the drawings forces a deep structural honesty. A well-composed plan has its own invisible elegance.
Yeah.
A heavily detailed section reveals a profound empathy for how light and gravity affect the human body. An elevation carries a quiet, carefully proportioned civic dignity. The art of architecture isn't drawing a pretty picture. It is the masterful resolution of this complex three-dimensional puzzle.
Which brings our deep dive full circle. We started today by unlearning our natural perspective, trading the atmospheric photograph for the clinical precision of the MRI. We moved from the strategic, organizational drone strike of the floor plan. We plunged down into the ant farm, the vertical drama and tectonic reality of the section, and we stepped outside to view the proportional civic handshake of the elevation.
Together, this triad is the secret language that translates the chaos of imagination into a measurable, inhabitable reality.
It reminds us that before a building can rise from the dirt, it must first survive the rigorous, abstract world of the drawing board. The paper has to approve the math before the concrete can be poured.
It absolutely does.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about your week.
Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah. The next time you walk down your street or step into a space that makes you feel a profound sense of awe, maybe it's a soaring cathedral, a hushed local library, or just that back corner of your favorite coffee shop that always feels perfectly cozy.
Try to mentally slice the building in half.
Exactly. Look at the walls around you and ask yourself, is the feeling I'm experiencing right now coming from the invisible plan that cleverly guided my footsteps to this exact spot?
Or look up at the theater.
Yeah, look up and ask. Or is this feeling coming from the dramatic section hovering above my head, negotiating gravity and light just for me? You'll realize that the spaces you love aren't just happy accidents of beauty.
They are the result of a fiercely coordinated, invisible geometry hiding right in plain sight.
They are the bones beneath the skin, just waiting for you to see them.